So class 13, but a brand new topic. We have databases and SQL. The main takeaways here is that we, in this class, are going to be using MySQL as the database type. MySQL is a form of SQL, just like Postgres and SQL Server, and there's a bunch of different types of SQL. And it just stands for structured query language. So it's talking about your relational databases. So I'm not expecting you guys to even really know what that means. But most people think of relational databases. So anything dealing with MySQL, you can set up to look like tables in an Excel sheet. There are other database types that you don't have to fit to a structure like that. You can kind of make up your structure on the go. There's like DocumentDB that uses more of like a JSON looking thing. DynamoDB uses a key value pair system. So there's lots of different types of databases that we could use. If you understand at least one of them, then that hopes that you can understand more of them. And I do think that SQL type databases are more common in industries that need structured and auditing information. So your big financial, your big healthcare, those companies are going to store most of their data in a relational database. So that's like MySQL or SQL Server. So once we get into MySQL, there are different types that you can do. There are numbers, but then they actually have different types of numbers. They have ints, which are the same thing as integer. I bet you, I'm just assuming here, but I bet you originally was integer. Everybody hate typing out the word integer. So they're like, okay, we'll just make int there, just like every other language. And it's the same thing. So integer and int is the same thing. Decimal and double, those are almost the same, but they're slightly different. Decimal is a fixed point, means they do not round it. Whatever the number is the number. Most of us would probably lean towards decimal. Double kind of rounds and does some floating point stuff. Again, for the level that you guys are in, I would just use decimal anytime you need to use decimal, and you'll be fine. Strings, there are different types of strings that you can do. Varchar is like more or less a group of characters, which that's what most strings are. So that's the one you're going to use most of the time. There are types like blob. When you are storing like a picture, you can actually like encode that picture to what we would call a blob, large object, something. So it's I can't remember the name of it, but I've stored pictures as blobs before, and they're just like this weird thing, but computers know how to read them. And then we have talked about enums, so I threw it out there. I have seen SQL tables with enums in the professional setting. And then Boolean, there's no other type of data there. Boolean is just true or false. And then the most confusing part when dealing with SQL is usually this date time, because some people use date, some people use date time, some people use timestamp, and they all format just slightly different. If you're using a really good, what I'm calling OMR, which we'll learn about later in a couple of weeks, object relational mapping, some of your built-in OMRs will handle this conversion stuff for you, so you don't even have to worry about it, because people do this all the time, so they built tools to help you. And then with date time, one of the questions that I was asked even during an interview is like daylight savings time, because my old team would have problems with daylight savings time. So databases, usually we store in what we call UTC, universal time. And then there's conversions and all that kind of stuff. So you guys don't have to worry about date time in the stuff that you guys are doing today or during this course, but do know that date time is some point of frustration out in the real world. And the main thing that we get to do with databases are CRUD operations. So anytime you're trying to hook up to a database, you're asking yourself, how do I create objects in there? And usually we're not talking about creating the table. We're talking about creating something you'd put in the table. How do I get the things out of the table, read them? how do I manipulate the things in the table, update, and then if I don't want it anymore, how do I get rid of it and delete it? So main, basic, CRUD operations, and we'll touch on all of those. Some common commands. This is one of those things where I would just keep like a cheat sheet somewhere, and just these, I always forget some of these. I know what they mean, but then I always have to Google them. So creating a table, you just say create table, and then you put your table name. Adding a row is your insert into, is adding, and then you say what table, and then the values. There we go. So you insert into the table, and then you put in the values. And then adding a column, you're going to alter table. So alter is changing. My suggestion is very rarely do you want to alter the table in a production setting. So oftentimes you are you need to think about your data structures before you go in. You'll get a lot of weird data when you're messing with columns. Reading is your select, update is your update, your delete is your delete. So those kind of make sense there. Your where is how to filter. So that's your like if type of situation. If their name is John, then give them back to me. So where name equals John. Your joins, again, this is what's really weird on this textbook is they go over joins, but then I don't think any of the examples talk about joins at all, like that you actually have to do. But then the studio tonight that I think we're supposed to do, but I don't know yet either, does do these joins. So you have to select, just like normal, from a table, but then you usually say your type of join, like your inner join or your left join or your right join. There's technically no full join. That's a full join is actually a union of everything. Again, I could go into a lot more detail, but I think for tonight, I'm not going to, but just know that there are joins. The joins, I stole this next slide straight from the book, which I do like the pictures, but I'll talk about joins here in the next slide. Less common things that you will see are unions. So I have a math background, and in math, when you do like set theory or set notation stuff, there are union and intersections, and that logic is exactly the same here. So if you have two things and you union them, you just put them together. But when you union them, you do not overlap. So they're like, if you look at the Venn diagram, it'll actually like, it won't duplicate. Intersect is any of the duplicates. So if it's in both sets, it'll just carve out the ones that are in between them. Distinct. Sometimes you'll want, all, I don't need all colors of something. I'm just really making up something random. So let's say you're stating the colors in there. Let's say it's the colors of your pet. So there's like orange cats and gray cats, right? If you just want to know all the distinct colors that are in that table of all the different types of cats, you can just say distinct, and it'll kind of like pick out any new one that it hasn't seen, but it's not going to duplicate any of them. So distinct, hopefully makes sense. Whenever you fill in your data, there's an order by. That hopefully that makes sense, because your data is just going to come back, and then sometimes you need to like order by date or order by first name alphabetically. But you can set that, and then also limit. The main reason I put limit on there is because I have to deal with limit quite a bit. Remember, I'm working in a production setting where, let's say there's 3,000 entries of something. If I go query that and bring back all of them, and I bring back 3,000 things, that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of storage. It takes a lot of everything. So what I do is I do like limit and offset, and those are commands. And so I can limit it to just like 20, and it'll only give me 20. And once it fills that, it just gives it back to me. So it's a little bit lighter of a load to do. So you can actually limit how many things you get back. because this is in the book, I'm trying to look at my own screen that you guys can see, and it might be a little hard to read, but this is exactly what's in the book. I really care about the pictures though. So this top left one, that's talking about your inner join. It joins them together. This one talks about your left. This one talks about your right. And then this one's that full join, but that's really not what it does. Like I've never used a full join. You can do a union instead, but and this yeah, and guest invited to the vow renewal and the wedding. You're gonna do like this would be like an intersection. This would be like a union. Different ways to do it. Oh. I might talk about joins are actually in the next class, but I do want to talk about them just enough that you guys get used to them, but I'll go into more detail next time. Here are the questions. I did get a couple more late. I think I can talk a little bit about, but all right. Is there a difference between int and integer? That's one reason why I highlighted it as I was going through. There is no difference in SQL. Int and integer are the same thing. Is it better practice to use all caps for SQL? For SQL keywords. I've seen it both ways. It'll work. You do not have to capitalize the keywords, but I like it better as readability. So my suggestion is always capitalize them. If you get really good and you can just type fluidly in SQL, and if you become like a kind of expert in SQL, I doubt you'd capitalize them. You're just going to go and type. But I think for entry level, I like them capitalized to ensure the keywords are where they need to be. So it's just easier to look at. It's also, as a teacher, it's easier for me, like I said, readability. I can just look at your stuff and I know, oh, you're missing this keyword. It's pretty obvious when they're capital, they stick out a little bit more. Is there a rule of thumb of what length we should declare the varchar in SQL? This is a great question. It really depends on like performance and storage. Such as if I say, hey, I want to allow 255 bits, because it's usually bits. So if I want 255, but I'm going to store a phone number in there, a phone number is never going to be 256 bits long, never. So what I am doing is I'm storing the allocation every single time it puts a new row in there. It is leaving room for 255 bits when it doesn't need it. So yes, there is a rule of thumb, only do what you need, but it's okay to have a little bit of space if you don't know exactly how much you need. So just kind of keeping that out there. As an entry-level person, you're going to see what other people have used in your company, and you're just going to match it. That's how a lot of programming is. You just steal from somebody else who's already been doing it. So, but yes, it is mindful. Do be mindful of it, but you don't have to worry about it. Is there a proper way to save, store SQL files? Now, if you're talking about files, like you're typing queries and typing create things, they're just a text file. You just save them as a .SQL so that people know that it's a .SQL, but they're just text files. The computer reads them just like a text file. So I don't know. Sorry, there's chats on the IA, and I was hoping they would talk about the studio so I could read about it, but they're not. Whenever you store SQL files in a production type environment, every time you do additions or edits or delete, anytime you modify your database, And I'm not talking about putting in entries like, oh, I need a new patient, because that's just going to happen through the UI. I'm talking about the structure of it. If I want to add a new table, if I want to edit the table, if I want to edit the structure at all, you have to save those in your version control, just like everything else of your code. And so you do have to save those. Oftentimes in like Java, you're going to have like a resources folder, and you might store them in there. They're not going to run all the time. You do not want to put it in your Java file, like in your Java directory, because it's not a Java thing. You can technically create your own. I think on my old team, I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was way out of the structure. It wasn't even the resources. It was like on a top level thing. But it's because, about once a month we were messing with database structures. So every time we edited something, it went into that folder to help us keep track of all the information there. Yeah. The other question was, in MySQL, I think by default, it doesn't let you kind of delete and maybe edit files without using the primary key. Somebody did respond back how to change that in MySQL. The only thing I want to touch on that, you guys, certain things are set up in place so that it helps you not just delete things you're not supposed to delete. So just know that those rules, they're guidelines. They are there to help you, but we're also in a weird place when we're learning. So it's perfectly fine to mess up. It's perfectly fine to, delete stuff, because you're also adding things that maybe you shouldn't add either. So you need to delete them and mess around. So I would be fine if you guys turned off that kind of safe mode, knowing that it's something to protect you for long-term data. All the stuff you guys are messing with now, we could throw away and it's fine. When you get to your project, though, I would not have that safe mode turned off on your project. That's the kind of stuff that, once you start typing in your information and building up your database, you don't want that data to go away. So, and for some reason, I didn't know if there was one other question. Oh, and then last question that came in, it's not on here. Can MySQL files be worked on across multiple computers? So if you're talking about files, maybe, because those are just text files. If you're talking about the actual data that's stored in the database, the only way they can be worked on across multiple computers is if those multiple computers can hook up to the same database. So if you're running it locally on your machine, then no. If you find a cloud-based solution that can host your stuff, then yeah, 5 people can all go to that one. Another thing that I wasted my time on today, I used to have a free SQL server account online, and I let it lapse because it was free. I was like, I don't need this anymore. And then I went and logged back in, and now it won't let me create a new database. So I was hoping to show you how to do that online stuff once I find a better one. So I'm hoping to find one by Monday. I can share that with you and show you how to use Workbench to hook up to that as well. For local understanding, learning, you do not need to do cloud-based, but I would maybe think about when you do your project to have a shared database so that you guys can help each other out there. All right. Oh yeah, I should have flipped this up. Here's all those numbers. They have like tiny ints, small ints, medium ints, and big ints. These are how many bytes are stored. Remember, the bigger the storage, the more actual hard drive space you need, but then also the more processing power it sometimes needs to pull through that, because it has to check more bytes. So the default ints, the only thing that you need to be worried about is this maximum minimum value. meaning if you want to store more than 120 different types of numbers in something, you cannot use a tiny int. It can only go from 0 to 127. So your primary keys should not be tiny ints, because if you ever get more than 127 objects, then you can't add anything else to your database. Most people use int by default, which that's a lot. 2 trillion. Yeah. You could technically go -2 trillion as well. Again, hopefully we can get you some more clarity before the end on Studio, but really this graded assignment is due. I will share just a tidbit of frustration. Don't take this personally, because you guys are definitely learning. And it is super boring listening to me talk for almost an hour and a half to 2 hours every single time. But there are certain tidbits of information that whenever I talk about them, and then I say them at least 5 times during the lecture, I need you guys to pick up on them a little bit more. And if you don't pick them up, help each other out and post them in Discord for each other. For instance, there are several people that were still concerned with local test passing whenever on GitHub it gave you the green check mark. So I think since day 1 in this class, well, this is probably the first time that those have not matched, I guess. So I understand why there's a little confusion there. But if you get a green check mark on GitHub, you're good. For anything else left in this class, that's exactly what you're looking for. I know there's only, after graded assignment 2, there's only 2 more, graded assignment 3 and graded assignment 4. But green check marks on GitHub mean that you did it perfect. So don't overthink that. Yeah, I just answered a lot of those questions this past couple days. So make sure that we're helping each other out, reminding each other that doesn't matter. The green check mark what matters. All right. Like I said, as soon as I get off these slides, the first thing I'm going to do is show you MySQL. And then I go to my workbench. This is how you tell. I know this is small. Once I start typing things that I absolutely need you to see the words, like the actual letters, I'll zoom in a little bit more. But right now, hopefully many of you know that this looks like a task manager off to the side, and I'm looking at MySQL for database. If this is running, then in MySQL, I should be able to just connect with this thing here. And then whenever you connect with this thing here, the first time you do it, it'll make you sign a password. And then you can say, hey, you can store it in the vault. I always store mine in the vault. Success anytime you do that. If it does not work, you'll see something like this. You'll see this thing down at the bottom that says no connection established. You'll see that the server is stopped. You'll see things like that. That means that your server is not running. So I do want to call out your server and your workbench are 2 totally different programs. Your server is actually running the database. It's keeping the database connections open. It's actually doing the commands, executing the commands, but there's no like interaction with it. I could do command line. I could go in and do everything you're doing here just through the command line, but then we wouldn't get all of these nice like colors and things like that we can see. You'd have to just do it like normal. So we want a GUI. We want a user interface that we can type this stuff into and see what we're doing. That is Workbench. So hopefully you guys understand those are 2 totally different things. So your server, to see if it is up and running, if you go to your task manager and you see MySQL running, then your server is running. If it says, and then it should just connect localhost. Like I did not create this connection. This original connection was made for me. But again, Right now, I have this running over here, and if I quit my PowerShell, my MySQL goes away. It disappears. This is because I think if I restart my computer, it might come back, but I messed with something, it broke it, it doesn't like me, so now it went away. Because there's some oddities of that, my suggestion is to not run it through here, but run it through a containerized service. So that containerized service that I use is called Docker. Docker is a very well-known containerized, oh, that was not good. I just closed out of other things that I wasn't supposed to close out of. Right. This is the Docker site. It's like the blue whale with like containers on top of it. These are supposed to be like a boat with containers. If you just download this, I guess that won't do too much for you. When you download that, it'll install on Windows, and I think Mac has this same thing. As you can see, you can have a Mac with Intel or a Mac with Apple or Linux. You install this, and not only does it come with Docker, which is the service that runs behind it, but it also comes with Docker Desktop. And there are ways to do everything I'm going to show you without the Docker Desktop. In my professional setting, Docker Desktop technically costs money for enterprises, so we don't do that at work. So I have to do all of this stuff through Docker commands. So everything you can do through a command line. But once you install this, you'll get this app called Docker Desktop. Docker has a bunch of preloaded, pre-usable containers. So Docker engine, meaning the Docker service, not this GUID that's Docker Desktop, but the service underneath is starting up. I cannot zoom in on this, so you don't need to read this as much as just know kind of what's going on here. I'm just going to delete this. I thought I hit the delete. There we go. Once you're here and it says containers, you can actually go to the top in the search bar. In the top search bar, it allows you to search for any type of container. I'm wondering if they have Spring. Yeah, they have like a Spring Cloud Data Flow. They have a Spring Boot Maven. I mean, they have almost anything that you can containerize. They have pretty much running here. I'm going to search for a MySQL. There are a few different ones you can do. I like the one that has the most downloads, which is this top one. It's MySQL. The tag is the version number. So it's which kind of version do you want? I'm just going to do latest. What's cool about containers is they are going to run, but they're going to run their own operating system on your machine that you don't need to manage. So when I say, hey, I want Debian, which is a Linux-based thing, it's going to run Debian on my machine, but it's containerized, it's surrounded, and so I don't really know what's going on the inside. It's going to open up some ports that I can get access to and use what's inside of it, but the stuff that's running inside is just going to run by itself, like as a whole unit that I don't touch. So I'm just going to do latest. At first, you cannot do run. You have to pull. Pull means that you're pulling it from the cloud and putting it on your machine so that then, after you pull, you can run. So when I hit run here, it says, hey, what are these other settings? I can name my setting whatever I want to. So I can say like class 13. You get to assign ports. It'll tell you what the defaults are. So if you just leave them blank, they'll be this one. I don't want to go too much into networking, but your computer uses multiple ports all the time. and I don't want to confuse any of them. So I actually do put zeros here to assign randomly, because it really doesn't matter. The volumes, I can do this. But then I need this environment variable, and unfortunately, that is what I accidentally closed out of earlier. So it's going to take me just a little tiny bit to find. Oh, it didn't take me as long as I thought. One of the things that MySQL needs is they need a root password. So this doesn't just like go in and this is something that it builds on the spot. Like, so it doesn't exist. And then as it runs this container, it actually builds my database for me. And so I need to tell it what the password is, just like when you installed SQL Server, it forced you to say, hey, what's the root password? It forced that on you. The same thing here is. And I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4 is my value, because it really doesn't matter. So I do have to set this or it doesn't work. The container name doesn't matter, and these ports don't technically matter. We just need to know what port they run. And then I hit run. What this does, it starts, I don't think I can't, maybe I can, no, that's a search. None of these have like the easy, oh, maybe it does. There we go. This is what it's doing on the back end. It's creating my server. It's creating my database files. It's creating all of these things or skipping them. These are configured scripts that somebody else has already made for me so that I don't have to do it, because everybody knows everybody wants to use MySQL. So why are we recreating the wheel every single time? The only thing that I need to worry about is right up here are these blue things here. These are my ports. It is binding this 32.769 to port 3306. 3306 is the port that MySQL runs on by default. So I am going to use this first port, and Docker will then change that. Once it goes inside the container, it'll change that to the 3306 that it needs to run inside the container. So it's almost like, here's the outside port that I need to call. Here's the inside port that it's going to bind itself to on the inside for me. So hopefully you see that I didn't take very long. The hardest part is downloading Docker Desktop. I go up here, I search MySQL, I hit pull if I haven't, then I hit run. I typed in just a couple little things, and now I have a SQL Server running. Like, it's running right now. Now I need to connect to it. So now I need to go back to my workbench, and I need to connect to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this one. Yeah, this one does not zoom in. I am not super impressed with Workbench. I think I can make some things bigger. I went in here before. It also took me like an hour to figure out how to do this. If I change these numbers to something higher, these are the font size numbers. And so if I hit OK there, did it make it a little bit bigger? Maybe. Let's make it even bigger. As long as it doesn't eat up too much of my real estate on my... Yeah, I don't know. But, so hopefully you can at least see this. You guys should have seen this type of diagram before. If I'm going to connect to any SQL database, I'm going to hit the plus. And it's going to say, hey, what do you want to do? The connection name, I'm sorry, I really don't know how to make this bigger for you. I'll answer some questions at the end. Let me finish this. So the connection name is just whatever connection name you want. I'm going to name mine Docker. It does not have to be Docker. It's just, that tells myself. This is a note to yourself. The connection name is a note to yourself. What are you even connecting to? The only other thing that I need to change here is the port number. Remember, by default, it's 3306. But mine, on the outside, I need this 32,769. So that's what I need to put here. And then I'm going to hit test connection. So again, just a connection name, port, test connection. And then it pulls up and it says, hey, you're going to sign in as the root user. What's your password? And remember, I created that password as 1234. So that's what I typed in there. I'm going to go ahead and save my password in my vault. And it says, hey, warning, there's some weirdness going on here. It's a different version. There could be some unsupported stuff. Do you still want to continue? Nothing wrong. It's just warning me that there could be some differences. Fine. And then it says successfully made the connection. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to actually go OK, and I'm actually going to come into the program now. And these are my files that I was messing with before. We'll talk about those. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. You can create this super fast once you get Docker installed. This thing comes super fast. You just need to make sure you get the right port stuff done, and then it works. So the question was, is there a difference between this Docker server from the SQL server that is downloaded? So Docker is just the container around it. The SQL server is the same. So Docker is almost like a mini operating system that can run anywhere. So Docker is saying, hey, I want a Linux operating system running and then I'm telling it MySQL. I'm going to let MySQL in there. So, I mean, technically, whenever I download this container, it comes with all of these files in it. It has execution steps. Like I can actually execute. This is a shell command. It's a Linux-based machine. These are all the things that it just puts in so much stuff in here for me that I don't even have to think about, as long as I'm okay with whatever's inside the container, because I can't mess too much with the inside of the container. But the container is just the wrapper. The MySQL server is the same. So if you have something running, keep it. I think you guys have learned by now, like that's one of my key things. You get it to work, and then you just go with it. This is for things that if you don't have it working, instead of having to troubleshoot 20 different problems that 20 different people have, this is if you come to me and say, I have SQL Server problems, this is what I'm going to tell you to do. I don't want to troubleshoot all those possibilities of what could go wrong, what sometimes does go wrong. I can't even get SQL Server to run consistently on my own device, but I can get this to run 100% of the time, every single time. So I want to go with something that's consistent. So again, if you have it running, don't worry about this. If you don't have it running, and talk to me, I'll tell you to do these steps. Yeah. The other thing the other reason why I didn't mind bringing up Docker, whenever you guys do services in the real world, Docker is one of the containerized services that everybody is using. So for you to hear what Docker is, see at least something with Docker, you're not expected to know a lot about it, but your familiarity with Docker needs to be one where you don't know how to use it, but you know what it is. It's used everywhere. And if you're not using Docker, you're using some other containerized service. Let's actually get to some SQL work. I'm going to create a new one. All right. I wish I could zoom in at least over on this left side. Is there technically a magnifier? I haven't used this too much before. Can you guys? Oh, dang. I can't see you guys, but can you guys see my screen? When I magnify like this, you guys can see, okay. So when I magnify in, okay. So I'm gonna try this. I'm not gonna go 200, maybe. Well, let me do like 150. Yeah, the code you should be able to read. I want to, and when I get to the code, I won't zoom in. What I want to zoom in for is this stuff here. So these things here, your server status will show the status of your server, obviously, if it's running. So you can see that it's running. If this is not running, then something's wrong and you won't be able to do much. So make sure that your server status is good. The other thing that I keep seeing people get frustrated about is whenever they click this plus thing, and they're like, it says here, but I don't see what the book sees. The main tab that people don't remember about is down here. It says administration and schemas. Make sure that once you understand that your administration stuff's good, you guys will not need to mess with this administration stuff until you start adding users. So once you add users, which might be next time, I can't remember, you can add users through the administration management tools and add users. If you are not adding users, but you want to mess with your database, you need to go to your schemas. So make sure that you have this schemas clicked so that you can actually see your databases. That's all I wanted to really zoom in on. All right. Oh, it doesn't do? Oh, OBS does? Well, that's always fun. Yeah, I'll if you guys at least see where my mouse is on the side, this administration tab and schemas, you need to be able to know that you're on one of them or the other. I've seen too many people ask questions about, well, I can't see my databases, and it's because they're not on the schemas tab. So make sure that you're always clicking that tab. Let me, don't save. Save. This is what happens when I get a little click happy and it doesn't move right when I want. Okay, so let's go through exactly kind of what the book did. The book said the first thing that it wants to do is create a new database, a new table, a new database so that we can put tables. If you click the new database, you get to decide whatever name you want. I think it said something like, I'm going to do test class 13. I'll just do class 13. So class 13, you can find the command that'll do this for you just by when you hit apply. This is the command. If you ran this, this create schema and then your schema name, and you put that in your SQL file and ran it, it'll just, this is what it's running. So instead of pushing buttons, all of this could be done through running commands like that. So I'm going to hit apply. It says that it did it. Database and schema, in your guys' eyes, is the same thing. So database, schema, same thing. Now that I've created that, if I go on the left, here's the other common mistake or problem that I see. it doesn't know which database you want to be talking about. So you have to double click it and make it bold. So I know it's hard to see that it turned bold, but when I double click these, one turns bold and the other one does not. So you might have 7 different databases. And to be honest, when you guys are learning and testing things out, it's perfectly fine to have like 7 or 10 or 12 databases. Just make new ones, put information in there, try them out, and then delete them eventually. So make sure that you're double clicked on the right one so that anything you run will run on there. If you want to run things, my suggestion is hit the plus SQL page here, and it pops up a new thing here. I'm going to get my cheat sheet ready. I really do have a cheat sheet on the side here. So the first thing I'm going to do something way different than the book does, because I think with the book, you can just copy and paste and it just works. I don't think there's too much that they tell you that you like have to like think about on your own, and then they don't tell you the answer. So what I want to do is I'm going to do something way more complex. You shouldn't have to like. So when I say complex, it is complex because you don't know right now which things to do every single time, but you should be able to follow along with me on the logic. So don't think that, oh, this is complex, I don't have to pay attention because it's going to just go over my head. No, the things that I'm doing should make 100% sense to you. You just don't have the skills to do it on your own right now. So make sure that we're still staying focused. I'm going to create a database of pets, owners, and vets, like veterinarians. So I'm going to take my pet to the vet, right? And then that means that there's going to be an appointment that I got to make and go to. So I'm going to make several tables here. The first one I'm going to make is the owner's table. So when I make a table, I do create. You see how I did not capitalize it, but whenever I typed it, it turned blue. That means it is a keyword. But again, I'm the one where I'm going to capitalize. So I'm going to say create table, because that's what I'm trying to create. And my table name is going to be owners, if I could spell. I guess owner is a keyword, but owners. And then I'm going to say, well, what goes in my owners table? Well, what goes in my owners table? I need an owner ID. And then I'm thinking, okay, so everything needs to have a primary key. I don't know if they really touched on that this section. I know it's something that they'll heavily hit on next section, but in a database, you don't have to, but it is 95% of the time you will have an ID of that table. So an owner ID. Even if you use it later or not, it's the easiest way to get what we consider a primary key, which every table should have a primary key, which I'll talk more about next time because it'll make more sense. So I'm going to use the vocabulary. I'll talk about it more later, but a primary key. And then I need to say, well, what data type is this? And I'm going to say that it's an int. And then I'm going to auto increment. Hopefully this makes sense on increment, meaning it kind of goes up by 1 each time. Auto meaning I don't have to think about it. Whenever I put an owner in, it's going to automatically get an ID associated with it. And then the next time I put an owner in, it's going to automatically get the next one. So it's going to auto increment every single time for me. Again, I'm not expecting you to know how to do this right now as much as when I explain what I'm doing, it should make sense. Primary key. So every table needs to have a primary key. That's the identifier, the unique identifier for anything in this table, meaning no owner should have the same owner ID. That's what primary key. You're telling the table which field, and technically you can have multiple primary keys, mean like combinations. We're not going to do that right now, but you could. that could be a unique. So this is telling the table no owner should have the same ID. And if it does, you're going to throw a big error. So the owner ID, I'm not going to split out first name and last name. I'm just going to do name. And here's our question. Well, how long are names usually? And these are bytes. These are not characters long all the time. So I'm just going to say 100 and round it. It's going to be, I don't know, somebody could have a long name. And then email, another varchar, that's going to be a character, they don't have an email type. I could probably go a little bit lower than 100, but I don't. And then a phone number. But on this one, I'm going to give a little bit of wiggle room, but I'm only going to make it 20 because I think every single phone number should be able to stick underneath 20. And then that's my table. Yeah, I don't know. I've used name, I don't know how many times, so I don't know what this is going over. Maybe it's just warning me. So I have an owner table, it has an owner ID, a name, an email, and a phone number. And I set these up as strings. This as an int that auto increments, so I don't have to worry about keeping track of what number I'm on. And the primary key, meaning no owner will have this, no two owners will have the same owner ID. The cool shortcuts with MySQL, if I click anywhere inside here, just anywhere, and I hold Control and I hit Enter, it will run the command. You didn't see it run, but right down here, it says create table owners, blah, 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 blah. It says a green check mark, and it says 0 rows affected. So down at the bottom here, it's giving me confirmation that this ran. And so you don't have to like do anything weird. You can just click anywhere in here, hold Control, hit Enter. This lightning bolt that has the cursor does the same thing. So the lightning bolt, if nothing is selected, I think it runs the whole thing. And if you highlight things and hit the lightning bolt, it'll just run that highlighted thing. I usually just click anywhere in here, hit Control, Enter. I need pet. Need to create another table. You see how all my tables are capitalized? That's very common. So I have pets. Let's see, for pet, I need. I think on this one, when I did it, I did not assign a primary key. Let's do it. Let's not assign a primary key. Let's do name. No, I did. I did do a pet ID. I'm looking at my wrong cheat sheet. I'm going to copy and paste some of this stuff in so it's a little faster. I have my pet ID. That's an int auto increment primary key, just like normal. I have a name because hopefully most people name their pets. I'm going to say a species. So I want to be able to differentiate between a dog and a cat. Here's where it starts getting different from your stuff, and this will lead into next time. I'm going to actually set an owner ID. I do think that they maybe talked about it a little bit, where you can actually set an owner ID that's up here into here, rather than typing the owner's name. You can just say, hey, the owner is this owner, and I'm going to match it up here with this owner. That's why I'm using an owner ID instead of a name. But then I need to formally join them together. I need to say, not only does this value of owner ID be an int, this owner ID matches this owner ID. Like those are a pair. Like I'm going to join, like as a structure, I'm putting them together. And the way you do that is with what we call a foreign key. Foreign meaning from a different table. So I'm saying from a different table, take this table property, which is this one. So this one's this one. And it is going to reference, meaning it's going to call out and be the same as, hopefully, the owner's table. That's what's up here, owner's table. And then the property inside the owner's table is the owner ID. Oftentimes, these two names will be the same because they represent the same thing. They don't have to be, though. That's where it can get a little confusing. But what I am doing here is I'm saying this owner ID should match up to this owner ID up here. The weird thing is, it's not going to check it. It's just going to say when you call it, not when you create it, because when you create it, it's not going to check it. But whenever you get it back from the database, when you do a select command, it will try to link them. So it's a little different. Foreign key says foreign, meaning a different. I'm going to match it with this thing. Again, I'm going to click anywhere on here. I'm going to hit Control Enter, and then down at the bottom, it says that it created that table. I have pets. I take pets to a vet. So I'm just going to copy and paste this thing here. So I have a vet table. The vet has an ID that auto increments. It has a name, and they have a specialty. And then when we talk about relational databases, we're thinking pets obviously have an owner, so that's why that connection's there. Does a vet, the vet doesn't have a pet, and a vet doesn't have an owner. Like there's no relation directly to those. They get related. I'm going to create this table before I forget. They get related when you actually make a visit. So I'm going to copy and paste this visits table in here. Now the visits is where they all come together. A visit is going to have a unique visit ID. It's going to say what pet using its ID came in, what vet saw it, and those are the things that matter. With a visit, it's a pet and a vet. So then some might say, well, don't you need an owner here? And if you put an owner in here, you could get away with that. But if every pet up in the pet has an owner, if the pet has an owner, then you're not taking the owner to the vet. You are taking the pet to the vet. So we are going to leave the owner out of it because it might have been somebody else that took it to the vet. We're going to leave that alone. We're just going to associate the vet with the pet inside this visit. And we can see how we can query that to then also see what owner that pet has. Because they are linked, they're just linked up in the pets table. Again, the reason and visit date, I was trying to decide something that would use a date and then a reason. And a reason can be pretty long. That's why we're using 255, because it could be a longer reason to visit. And then I am officially setting that the pet ID that I use here should be the same pet ID that's in the pets table, and the same thing with the vet. I'm going to run that, and I got my green check mark down here. If you notice, every single time I run something, I'm looking for that green check mark, because too many times somebody will just pull in a whole bunch of stuff, hit the run button, and then there'll be a red thing, but they assume that it went in, and then things don't work, and they're wondering why. Well, it's because one of the action items that you did, it didn't like. So I created all these tables. Now let's populate some of these. Now I will do a lot of copy and paste here. So I'm going to say, I will try to hand type some of this at first, because when you want to put information in a table, you have to know the keyword there. And that keyword is going to be insert. So I want to insert, I need to say into, and I'm going to go table by table. Since I made the owners table first, I'm going to insert into owners, if I could spell it right. Owners. I'm going to insert into the owners table, and then you got to say structurally, what are you putting in? Well, I'm going to give you the name, I'm going to give you the email, and I'm going to give you the phone of the owners. Because remember, it's going to auto increment the ID, and I don't think there's anything else there. Yeah, it's going to auto increment the first one, and I need to give it the other ones. And then what am I going to put in? I'm going to tell it what values to put in. And the values I'm going to put in, I'm going to copy and paste these things here. They have names, emails, and phone numbers. And then I'm just going to do Control Enter. It says that it inserted in successfully, and it said 5 rows affected. So it put the 5 things in there. I'm going to do it for the other tables real quick. We're running a little bit long on time. I'm going to insert into pets, the same type of thing. But here the owner ID is an int. Do you see how the int doesn't have anything wrapped around it? That's how it knows it's an int. I'm going to Control Enter that. It said red. It said insert into pets, and it said column count doesn't match. It says it doesn't match. And that's because right here, whenever I said owner ID, this one I did not put an owner ID in. Whenever I am mass loading, they have to look identical to this. But this was my John Doe that I found on the side of the road. I don't know its owner. It still needs to go in here, but I don't know its owner. So I cannot populate it using this. So I'm going to get rid of that one for a second, because it did not meet the exact structure. So now I put these 8 in there, but then separately, I'm going to have to say insert into pets, but I don't know the owner ID, so I'm just going to give the name and the species, and now I'm going to put John Doe the dog in there. Do you see how tabs and that kind of stuff really doesn't matter? You can format it however you want to. And that says 1 row affected. So this came in. Here's another shortcut. I've been putting things in here, but like this one was weird. I want to make sure that it came into my pets. If I go over to the schema, and I know you can't see this very well, but right on the right-hand side of the schema, there's a refresh button. You're going to hit the refresh, and now my tables have a drop-down. They did not have a drop-down before because I didn't refresh my view. Once I refresh, I can see all of these. And then there's a really cool shortcut. If I want to see all my pets, if I go over to the right side here and hit the table button, it will go ahead and create the query and run it, and it'll show me my table super fast. Obviously, you guys should learn how to run this command on your own, but I've done this several times where this creates it off to the side, and then I can just exit out. I'm confirming, though, that my dog here does not have an owner ID. That'll come important later when I run a couple queries. I need to insert in my vets. So there's all my vets with specialties and names. 6 rows affected. I got all those 6 in there. And then I'll hang on to this one for just a second. Wait a second. On my pets, what was the ID of this one? 9. I'm going to change this one to 9. So this one says my visits, pet ID, vet ID. So these are my pets that it's talking about. These are my vets that I'm talking about. Here's the dates, and here's the reasons. You could type in, if you type in null, you could have done that. Absolutely. To be honest, I was just trying to show it as I like to show you when things break. And so if you don't have an owner ID, you can't run it like it is right here. But another way to get around it is this way. But yes, absolutely. You could put, I could have done null. So that was the question. Did I run this yet? I don't think I did. insert into vets, insert into visits. Okay, 9 rows affected. Okay, so now I have visits. So whenever I go over here and I refresh, I can see that each of my tables, my visits are populating, my vets are populating, my pets are populating, and my owners are populating. So my tables have been populated. Let's say, how do we want to edit this? Because remember, I'm doing create. I created things. Read, which we're going to get to in a second. That's the harder one. Update. Let's see. What would be a good reason to update? I had a cheat sheet. Okay. Let's say that one of my owners, let's say that John Doe here, he changed his email address. So a new animal would be pretty easy because then I can just do this right here. And so adding, I could add now remember, this number has to match my owners. That's why sometimes with you guys, you're going to go to your owner table and you're going to say, oh, number 4 is this one. So make sure that you want to add it to number 4. But yeah, when you add, it's just an insert. How about this though? Let's say that I added this to number 4, but it wasn't number 4. It was supposed to be number 3, right? Then what I want to do is I want to edit that. So what I want to do is I want to update. Remember, update is edit. Pets. Well, first let's run it to make sure that it did run. So I'm going to run this again. And here's my James Snake 4. I want to change that to a 3. I accidentally put him in the wrong one. So I want to update pets. I want to set the species, not the species, the owner ID to be 4, right? No, it is already 4. I want to change it to 3. Now, I don't. If I ran this right here, it would go through and it would update all the pets to 3. That's why there's that safety mechanism where when you update, it doesn't want it wants to have a where clause. Because otherwise it will update all of the pets to have an owner of 3. So that's where I got to say where. Now, I could do several different wheres. In mine, since this is the only snake, I could say where species equals snake, and it would only do this one. If I did species equal dog, it would do every single one where there's a dog. So with this one, the best way to do it is with the pet ID. So my pet ID is 10. So I'm going to say where pet ID. Yeah, pet ID equals 10. And then when I run this, and it runs, right here, it's still 4, but I did not refresh. I need to rerun this. And when I rerun it, it's now at 3. So tonight, no matter what we do tonight in studio, I need you to do some update things and see that they changed and where they changed. And to be honest, I would have been perfectly fine if you did this and accidentally changed them all to 3, because then you would learn. So do not be afraid of messing up. Just type things. And when you have that curiosity, well, what would this do if I did this? Do it. Try it out. See what happens with these. Okay, so I did at least one update. I think I'm good on the update. Unfortunately, let's say Max. Yeah. Actually, the snake, the owner didn't like the snake. We're going to just delete that one. So I can just show you a delete. So there's an update and then a delete. A delete is obvious. You're going to do a delete. The delete. When you do a delete, you got to also say kind of where it's from. So I'm going to say from pets. And then I'm going to say where, and I got to tell it which one. Because if I just say delete from pets, it'll delete all the pets. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to say where, and then I got to give it some kind of condition. And again, I'm going to do pet ID equals 10, just because I know that that's going to be a safe delete there. When I go here and I rerun this, that snake is now gone. Yeah, Max almost got it, but Max might have had a visit and I want to show off something there. So, all right, so hopefully we're good with everything but the gathering information. Hopefully, even from the gathering information, let's do this. You see how I removed? So this is another thing with MySQL. It puts the database, if you don't select a database, you can put the database there and then the table, and it'll know which one it is. If I get rid of the actual database, this still runs properly. That's because I have class 13 selected. If I go over to system and select system and I hit this, there's a red X down here and it says, hey, there's no owners. But if I went back and I did class 13 owners, it would still run. Even though I'm in my system database, I can still run SQL commands. I do not suggest doing that. I suggest highlighting the one that you want, double clicking on it, making sure that it works, and then doing this. Let's say that I don't care about owner ID. I just want to know everybody's name. I can just say, hey, give me all the names. And it just gives me all the names. This is a wildcard. So now it gives all of them. Let's say that I want to select all the owners where their name equals John Doe. It'll just give me John Doe. I'm just showing you some basic things. If I just want to know the email of John Doe, I can say select the email from John Doe, and it'll give me John's email. So the reason why I capitalize these, the select is what you're getting back. What do you want to get back from your query? Do you want the email? Do you want the name? Or do you just want all of it? From, you have to say, I have 4 tables here. You got to say which table it's from. And then do you want all of it? Or do you want some kind of condition on it? So there's that. Another thing that I use at work all the time is the keyword like. This is the one I use at work all the time. This says where the name is like, and then I put these wildcards before or after. If there's a J anywhere in it, give it back to me. This one is a little bit more specific. This says if it starts with a J and then has anything. These are all commands that I didn't know this one very well before working professionally. So once you start working at the job, you're like, oh, I wish I could do this. And then you go Google it, and then you find out what it is, and then you use it all the time. I don't like being exact on email addresses when I look up users. So I always use this like instead of equals, because then it just makes it a lot easier if I cut off some things. So the percent sign is done inside the ticks for strings. It is not like case sensitive. Actually, I don't. Yeah, I guess searches by general are case sensitive or case insensitive. It's not the wildcard that did that. And like if I wanted E to be the last one, I could do something like this. This will give me all of them. So N is the last one. This will give me 2 results. Yeah, different things. The keyword like doesn't have to be capitalized. That's just a keyword. So that's why I capitalized it. Name is blue, but that I don't like that name is blue. This is the name column. Right. You can do ands. So let's say this isn't a very good one. Let's go to pets. I could say select all from pets where species equals dog. So this should give me a lot of them at first. But then I can say and name equals Max. There's actually 2 of them, I think. Yeah, there's 2 different Max the dogs by 2 different owners. I can use ands. I can use ors technically. An or on this one doesn't make sense because all the dogs, unless it or let me see a good or let's say Fluffy. So this one will do all the dogs, but it'll include Fluffy the cat. All right. I can do order by, I guess. Order by name. Now they're all in alphabetical order. I think that was something. Was there any other keywords? Yeah, there's so many keywords. I can't remember if there was some I might be forgetting. I do want to show you some advanced queries, and then I'm actually going to save a lot of these and put them whenever I post the video. Yeah. There you go. Ascending and descending. So descending goes backwards. Yeah, you can use like and or. They're just logic statements. So this thing by itself, so I could do a like here, and then an or separates the logic, and then I can do an equals here. It doesn't matter. These are separated. And remember, and means both of them have to be true, where or means that either one could be true, and it'll return anything that matches either one of them, where and will return only the ones that are both of them. All right. Now let's do some advanced ones. I did have to pre-do these. I'm not expecting you guys to be able to do this, but okay. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to list all pets with their owner names. Remember, pets are in one table and owners are in a different one, right? So we're going to have to do some joins here. This is my preloading for next time. You are not expected to be able to do this on your own right now. But whenever I do this, I'm going to do select. And remember, pets are in the pets.name. Did they go over the as? It's like an alias. I read it somewhere. So whenever you see these things at the top, instead of saying name, it's going to say pet name here. That's what I can do there. And then I'm going to do owners dot name, and I'm going to save that as owner name. Yeah, I think that's all I need, right? The pet name and the owner name, but I'm grabbing from the pet table name. I'm grabbing from the owner's table name for this one. I'm storing this as an alias. So the top here says pet name and owner name. And then I'm going to say from pets, but I need to join that with owners. And then I'm going to say, when I join it, I need to join it on something, meaning it's not going to magically know how to join them. Actually, because I have the foreign key set up, no, it does this thing right here. It actually joins all the pets with all the owners. So every pet has all the owners if I don't tell it where to connect that. So Buddy connects to all of them. So I'm going to say on. And then I got to say the IDs, because remember, those are the things that they match up. So I'm going to say pets dot owner, no, owner ID. Remember, that's that foreign key that I set up. So these, I have to say, what do you want to look at? Well, I want to look at the pets table of the owner ID, and that has to equal. This is like, how do I know that they're linked? Well, these have to be equal. So now Buddy is under John Doe. And if we go back to pets, you see how John Doe is owner 1. So that's Buddy, that's Max, and that's Oliver. So it's matching anybody with a 1 to the owner that has a 1, which is John Doe, and it's matching the name with the name. And remember, I said as, meaning, because this would have been name and this would have been name. If I don't have the as, it would have said name, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So this is the basic join. The basic join just says, if these are connected, join them together and display them here. Let me go back. There is a left join. Here's the cool thing about the left join. This is the reason why I had John Doe, the dog John Doe. John Doe does not have an owner. So when it got to this where the owner ID equals the owner ID, John Doe was left out because he doesn't have an owner. If I do a left join, then it will take all the pets, because the pets is on the left. The pets is first, so it's on the left. It'll take all the pets and make sure that it will list every single pet here. It forces the left to be full, no matter what this says. So the left displays on every single left one. But if they do have an owner, it displays them over here. And if it doesn't, it doesn't here. If we add an owner real quick that does not have a pet, oh my, that was not good. Is that insert? Hold on. So let's insert this in real quick. It did not like that. I think I accidentally hit something. Oh, I need a thing at the end. Okay. So now whenever I run my owners, I'm in there, right? And the whole reason I'm doing that, if I rerun this, do you see how I do not populate into here? Because I don't have a pet, and pet is on the left, and the left dominates this table. The pets dominate it. If I do a right, though, the owners are on the right. And it does the opposite. The dog that does not have an owner does not show up because we don't care about what's on the left. We only care about what's on the right. And we fill in this table with everything that matches on the right. And then we even include the things that do not match, meaning Philip does not have a dog or doesn't have a pet, but because I said right join, Philip has to at least appear on the table. So that's the difference between a normal join. This thing has to match or you don't get on the table. A left join says anybody on the left can still be on the table even if they don't match this, but we're also going to include all the ones that match. And then a right join allows people that are on the right to join even if they don't match. Was there inner join? Is that the other one? Your inner join, I think, is your normal join. If you don't say anything in front of the join, your inner join is the default. Because inner means that they have to connect. They have to have this thing matching or else you don't get it. If anybody remembers of a different one, let me know. But I'm going to move on to another query here. We're going to get some weird ones here. Let's do this one. We're going to list all their pets with their species. That's pretty easy because I can just grab the pets with species. But I need to put in their veterinarian names that they went and seen. Well, if you remember, we don't have the veterinarians that attach to the pets. The vets attach to the visits, and then the pets attach to the visits. So unfortunately, on this one, we have to do a lot of joins. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a select pets.name. I'll probably only do one or two more, and then I'll let you guys go. And then the pets dot species, right? Because remember, I want the pet, so their name and their species. So this should make sense. Pet names, pet species. This one I don't have to give an alias because the name is species. It's not a name, which could be construed as well as the owner name or the vet name. So I'm going to do this vets dot name as vet name. There we go. So that's what I want. That's the select. Remember, the select is everything you want. Those are the three things I want. Well, where do I want to start from? Which table is the most important? The most important one is the pets table. But I need to somehow get the other information. So I need to join. But again, pets are not joined to vets. Pets are joined to visits. And so I'm going to do this. And then I need to say on. How do I want to connect these? Well, the pets.petID needs to be equal on both the pets and the visits. So remember, these are going to look very similar. Most of the time, these are the same if you set up your tables very specifically. But then these are the tables that they come from. So the pets pet ID has to match the visit ID. And so it's going to join that. And it's just going to, oh, I'm saying vets here. So I got to include the vets. I was trying to show you just that table before I did it, but let's go ahead and do it. I need to include the vets. And I need to include them on the vets.vetID, whenever that equals the visits.vetID. So the pets are tied to the visits by the pet ID, and then the vets are joined to the visits by the vet ID. And now it tells me that Buddy went and saw Dr. Smith, Max saw Dr. Smith, Fluffy saw Dr. Patel. So it's joining those all together. Whatever table follows the on becomes the left. Whatever. Oh, good question. So how this actually calculates, it does this join first. and creates one table. That's one reason why I was trying to show you this. Here, I'm going to delete this and bring it back. It actually creates, before I joined in the other one, it creates this table first before it joins on this one. So it does it as two separate actions. It cannot do three tables all at once. It has to do it, and it always executes in the order that it was typed. So this join that I did right here, because that one was first, it's going to get executed first. And then this one's going to get executed second from not the visits table, but from the combination, the join of the pets and visits table. Fine. I think I'm going to do two more. I'm not going to fully type them out for you. I'm just going to copy and paste them. This one says, list all the pets that have visited a specific veterinarian. So I'm going to say select. The only thing I care about is the pet's name, right? I know what the vet name is because I'm going to type it in and hard code it, but I just need the pet name. And so I'm going to go from the pets to the visits and then the vet. So this right here should look identical. Here's one reason why I wanted to show this. If you do pets P, this reassigns the table name, and anywhere that I use the pets table, I can just now use P. So when it says p.name, remember up here, I said pets.name. Down here, I got p.name because once I declared what table it was, I said, just use P instead of pets every single time. So down here, it's P, it's not pets. Visits, I said use V. So the V is for visits. Now vets, I could have used whatever I wanted to. So I could do V, or I have to declare it first, and then I can say VT. I hated this one just because visits and vets, or maybe VE, VE. I can do VE here, and then instead of vets, I can use VE every single time. Those are shortcuts because sometimes your table names are a little bit longer, and you don't want to type your table name 7 times. So you just use an abbreviation, and you can do that. The only difference between this one listing all pests with their veterinarian is I said the where command, and I showed you that you can rename your tables temporarily as you go through this. When I do this, Dr. Smith only visited that. Well, if I look here at my original one, remember Dr. Smith only did Buddy and Max. This confirms it down here. It's Buddy and Max is what Dr. Smith did. One other one. How about we find out how many pets? This one states it differently, but then I'll show you. List all owners who have multiple pets. So on this one, I'm copying and pasting. I'm going to select all the owners because that's what I care about. And I'm going to, instead of it being name right here, I'm going to say, hey, put it as owner name. This count, I don't think we've talked about the count. Count actually just says, like, it actually counts them, like how many items are in there as pet count. So the title up at the top is going to be pet count. I'm going to go in the owners. I'm going to join it on the pets by the owner ID. I'm going to group by the name. And then because I want to know multiple pets, I'm going to say it has to have a count greater than 1 or else don't show it. So when I go here, there's only 2 owners that have more than 1 pet, and it's these 2. Now, if you're like, well, let's include all owner counts. All I have to do is remove this having count and rerun this. And now it'll show me all of them, including the one that has only 1. So again, what I am going to do, I have a cheat sheet of all of these queries. I'm going to give you all of this whenever I post my video. And hope that they all work. They worked earlier today, but I don't know if you realize in computers, even if it works once, that doesn't always mean it works again. So I think I'm going to quit there. unless if there's been any other questions real quick, and then I'll stop the video. Does a join create a new table, or is it just for reading? It is just a temporary, so that does not permanently join them. Yeah, the reason I could do o.name is because right here, after owners, I put an O. If I did not do this O here, if I delete this right here, it will throw a big error and it'll say down here, O name, unknown column O name. It doesn't know what o.name is. But once I say, instead of typing owners 5 times, let's just type O every single time I want to talk about the owners table. Now it works perfect. There's like little shortcuts. I think as an entry-level person, I would get more comfortable just doing the table name every single time. So if it was me teaching, this is what I would do, and this still runs perfect. So you know the table name and the variable or the column. So can you use join commands to create tables? Okay, this is a great concept. I'm going to try my best to explain this. You do not want duplicated data anywhere in a table, anywhere in your database. So if I'm taking 2 pieces of information, joining them together and recreating what I already have, and then I still have the original ones, that's a big no-no. You want live data every single time, because what if one of the pets gets assigned to a different owner? Then I have to update it in 2 different places. I don't just update it in one, I have to now do it in my new one. There are ways around this. There are things that we call views, which are like structured SQL commands like this. And I could just open up a view, and then whenever you hit that view, it'll just run this SQL for you. So you don't have to like retype this every time. So there are ways that you can get around this, but it still needs to run the query, because the whole point of SQL is that you do not have duplicated data. You don't relate things that are not related. You actually want, like I had 4 tables here. You want 4 tables here because it's talking about 4 different things. One of my tables is actually joining 2 different things together, and that preloads us into, well, what's the difference between a one-to-one relationship and a many-to-one and a many-many relationship? Think about this pet diagram as you're going through that before Monday on how you could relate some things together. But we do not want to duplicate data. Now, is there a way to take 2 tables and then merge them together and permanently make a new table and then delete the old 2? Yes, you can actually run commands to do things like that. Not recommended. Correct. So you're utilizing this to show data and relate data, but you do not want to store the vet right next to the pet or the vet right next to the owner. Zach, I might have you re-ask me that question during studio where I can better answer that, but I don't. I think I don't want to confuse JSON with this, because JSON is an object notation. It is an object, but it's not as structured as this. Yeah, whenever you're wanting to deliver a report, you have to query it, and you don't want all of the information here to be in one table. I'll try to better explain exactly what I said there, if I can find my pen. Bye.